Welcome, everyone, to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Patel and Kumar Show. I'm your host, Shivam Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. And Mr. Kumar, we had a blockbuster trade in the NBA yesterday. James Harden finally got his wish to be traded from the Houston Rockets to the Brooklyn Nets. In exchange for the Rockets got Victor Oladipo. So what a bombshell yesterday. What a perfect day for the Patel and Kumar Show. How are you, Mr. Kumar?
Top of the evening for me and top of the morning for you, Mr. Patel. And I'm so excited because we have some blockbuster news to cover in today's episode. First of all, I would like to wish everybody a very happy Makar Sankranti, Pongal, and Lodi, and of course, It's the season of harvest. So along with that, we have a blockbuster season for us as well. Right in episode 3 of our season 2. Welcome to all our fans, and we're gonna cover, of course, the COVID protocols that the NBA has implemented, the Kyrie news, and of course, we'll have Vin Bhavnani with us, the former assistant coach of the OKC Thunder, who also coached James Harden, and we'll be discussing more about James Harden with him as well. So you are right on. Right at the center is the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show.
Yep, we are the center of the NBA universe. No other place you would rather be. We're going to have such a great show today, as Mr. Kumar said. So without further ado, let's get started, Mr. Kumar. So, of course, no other place to start besides talking about James Harden traded to the Nets. So, Mr. Kumar, I want to know, what was your immediate thoughts when you heard about this trade?
Well, I think it is better late than never for both the teams. I think Harden was very clear in asking for a trade, and he was really frustrated, as you can see. Yeah. And of course, the Kyrie thing basically made it an impossible situation for the Brooklyn Nets. And they were compelled to probably do this trade just because of what happened with Kyrie in the last week. So, because they probably had this offer on the table even before the season started. Yep. But, with Kyrie handling the situation over the last week, I think it was kind of inevitable for the Brooklyn Nets. But on paper now, the Brooklyn Nets are the team to beat in the NBA.
I believe so too, and I'm hoping that's going to be a Brooklyn Nets, Los Angeles Lakers NBA Finals. And the Brooklyn Nets have a big three, Mr. Kumar, with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. The biggest thing I want to see is their fit together, because they're three ball-dominant players. They were joking that Kevin Durant went from the Splash Brothers to the Dribble Brothers. So let's see what's going to happen, because all these guys love to have the ball in their hand, love to get their own offense. And for the Nets, perspective, they did lose a lot of key role players. They lost Karis LeVert, who was an emerging star, Kuruc, Taurean Prince, Jared Allen, who was a great rim protector. So they're going to be really top heavy right now. But I just want to see their fit and whether these guys can gel together and how they play together.
Yeah, and I don't think the Houston Rockets did really bad. They did get Victor Oladipo. So that just keeps them probably in the playoff picture as well in the West. And of course, they got a lot of picks for the future. So it does really make good sense for Houston. And of course, Indiana Pacers getting Karis LeVert, and the Cleveland Cavaliers getting Jared Allen. The only thing it does for the Brooklyn Nets is totally wiped out their bench. So I think it's going to be not only adjusting to James Harden in the starting 5, but also who's going to come off the bench for Brooklyn Nets, because now it's pretty much like there's an empty bench for the Brooklyn Nets.
It really is, because off their bench right now, they have probably most likely going to have Jeff Green, Landry Shamet, TLC, Luwalu Cabarro, that's his name. He's been playing really well. So, they're going to have some pieces, but let's just see, how they fit together. And Muthu is saying the beer to the Nets, blockbuster or just a bust. carrying him in one team. So we'll see, because there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different egos. Let's see how they, come together. Are one of those guys going to be willing, like Kyrie or James Harden, be willing to play off the ball, because Kevin Durant is still the best player on that team. So they have some chemistry stuff that they got to figure out. But if they do, and if everybody buys into the team, Mr. Kumar, this has to be one of the favorite teams to win the championship.
Well, at least we know that probably James Harden is going to buy into this, because he's been asking for a trade, and his preferred destination was the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
So it's a good situation for James Harden. So, I mean, we just need to see what's going to happen with Kyrie Irving. How is he going to come back, and what's his situation is going to be. But it's going to be a difficult situation for a coach, a new coach like Steve Nash.
Yeah.
I mean, he's totally new to the NBA, and it remains to see how he handles his business, especially with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving all hogging the ball, because they're not like really off-ball players. They all need the ball in their hands to do something,
Yeah.
So the adjustment is something that also needs a lot of work. And you don't have a preseason now. The games have already started, and people are missing a lot of games due to COVID protocols as well. So it's going to be something on the fly. And their record is not that great yet. I mean, we did expect them to probably be the number one team in the East, but right now, because of various absences, I mean, they just got out over the about 50% winning rate.
Right, they are kind of been inconsistent, but I think that's because Kevin Durant's not played as much, or Kyrie Irving. But Mr. Kumar, I like this trade is still early. We're still like 3 weeks into the season. They have a whole rest of this season to figure it out. Get everybody blended together. So there's still time on their side for the Brooklyn Nets. But Steve Nash is going to have to manage these egos. And none of these guys are really leaders, but out of all these three guys, Kevin Durant's going to have to step up as a leader. He's going to have to be like, if Kyrie Irving and James Harden are not happy about their touches or their shot attempts, Kevin Durant's going to be like, hey, guys, we want to win. That's the bigger purpose here. So he's going to have to manage their egos. And we'll see, because Kevin Durant can show that, hey, I won in Golden State with the Big Four. So we can do it with the Big Three here, with the Brooklyn Nets. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But Mr. Kumar, about Kyrie Irving, I don't know if he's going to play or not this season. There's reports that he may be willing to sit out, the rest of the season due to personal issues. He was caught on camera maskless, at his sister's birthday party on a Zoom call for a Manhattan DA position. So we'll see what's going to happen with Kyrie Irving, and whether he's willing to come back, especially after this trade happened.
I called it out right at the beginning when you picked the Brooklyn Nets to probably go on and win the championship. That this is something that's just waiting to happen. Just knowing what the personality of Kyrie Irving. No doubt he is one of the greatest ball handlers, greatest point guards to play in the NBA. But at the same time, his temperament needs a lot of work. I mean, his experiment didn't work in Boston. After winning a championship, he asked for a trade in Cleveland after playing with one of the greatest NBA players, LeBron James. So I think this was just a time bomb. It was a ticking time bomb, and it had to burst at some point in time.
But at least for the Nets, Mr. Kumar, hopefully they got it out of the way early, and hopefully he can get his head right. He said he had some personal issues, so hopefully he worked out whatever he needed to work out off the court, and he's coming back refreshed and ready to play, because Mr. Kumar, he was completely balling at the beginning of the season. He bought into defense. He could just get his own shot whenever they wanted to. There was no problem with him and Kevin Durant played. They kind of knew when it was each of their turns, like, okay, Kevin, it's your turn to take over. Okay, Kyrie, you take over. So I think they were playing well together and mixing well. But hopefully that doesn't get ruined by this extended absence. And before I hand it back over to you, Mr. Kumar, they said that Kyrie Irving's at least going to be out till Saturday. So we'll see what's going to happen, and whether, he's not been in contact with the team. Sean Marks said that. Steve Nash is up in the air. I think that was wrong, Mr. Kumar. When he first decided to sit out, he texted his teammates, which was good, but he didn't text head coach Steve Nash. And that shows you the way he feels about Steve Nash, because at the beginning of the season, he said, we don't need a coach. So he's going to have to buy in if the Nets want a chance to win this championship.
Of course, and we're soon going to have Vin Bhavnani, who was the former assistant coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he has pretty much worked with Kevin Durant and James Harden. So he will have a lot to say about this trade as well.
Great perspective,
yeah. So I think, is it time to bring him on? I think it'll be great to have him on the show and get his views as well. So let's get Vin Bhavnani, the former assistant coach of the OKC Thunder.
The Indian Durga segment, our favorite segment. Please welcome to the Patel Kumar show, the former assistant coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, Coach Vin Bhavnani. And Coach started as an intern with the Clippers and the Spurs before working for 12 years with the Oklahoma City Thunder, is starting off as the video coordinator, the manager of advanced scouting, and then later becoming an assistant coach. So, Coach, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you guys for having me from San Antonio in India. This is a big time connection between you two.
Yeah.
So is it harvest season? Is that that's what I heard. It was Is it
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I actually there's an album that one of a group that's close to me. It's a rap group from India. It's called Rebel to the Grain, and they have an album called Harvest Season. So now I know where they got the name from.
So I mean, yeah, we have two harvest seasons. So one, I mean, this is like the first season. It ends in January, and then we have another season which comes up in September. So I mean, it's all agricultural based, and it's a very big festival in Ahmedabad. I mean, you might know a little bit about Ahmedabad and
That's right.
Makar Sankranti, and a lot of people flying kites and stuff like that. So
I was in Ludhiana, and big farming community out there, right in North India.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah, it's called Lodi in Punjab. Yes.
Yep. Happy Makar Sankranti. Yep. So Coach, getting started, we have to ask you about the big blockbuster trade, James Harden to the Brooklyn Nets, and you coached James Harden and Kevin Durant as well as Russell Westbrook. So what were your immediate reactions to this trade, Coach?
I mean, it's for an opposing, just from a coaching standpoint, it's difficult. I mean, it's the obvious, right? You got the three talents, but it's difficult because now when you have three instead of two, you could have two of those guys on the court for 48 minutes.
Yeah.
So from an opposing coaching standpoint, it's like the second unit. How do you deal with those matchups? Who is going to guard one of those guys with your second unit? Because usually you have guys in your first unit. So you're thinking more along those lines. So 48 minutes, you're covered. Now, of course, they're going to have things that they have to find out because now there's 60-something more games left. You're going to have a 5-game honeymoon period. Now, the whole thing with Irving that you're talking about, this is assuming that he's back in action. So you're going to have a 5-game honeymoon period that usually happens, where you can kind of, afford to lose and kind of figure it out rotation wise. And that's a short amount of time, but you don't necessarily need to practice as much. I'm learning that the past few years. You need a training camp. All three of those guys went through a training camp. You were talking about Mr. Patel. You're talking about the first couple games, right? So you saw how Brooklyn looked. So they're definitely motivated. They're inspired. It's hard to win. It's hard to do those little things for the whole game. If you watch Brooklyn's first 2 games, you're going to see that, right? So that it's a lot of it is the mental. There's going to be times where the guys just feel like doing their own things, but something will drive them back together. Now a good example of that is Boston, right? When Boston had the big 3 come in, big 4 actually, in those years they won the championship. You saw it in preseason, all right? So during training camp, you'd see how they played was exactly how they played in the finals. So it was a doing the little things, something kind of united them. We're about winning the championship this year. All those things spill over. It usually happens early, then it fizzles out and comes back. It's kind of like the Laker days with Phil Jackson, right? So, but I think they'll be motivated, to be honest with you. I hear you with the bench, but they have now 3 guys, right? So, and if there's a concern about, all right, maybe Harden needs to play Harden ball, for example, well, now he can do that for 12 minutes by himself, with the right supporting cast. That's just finding out who works with best with who. Does Durant and Irving work better together? But at the end of the day, there's going to be a few games, if they are fully on go, there's going to be a few games that it's going to be close. So now that last 5 minutes of the fourth, that's when those 3 guys, like we had an OKC last year, right? We had the best lineup in basketball, they said, when Schroeder was in there with the starters. So that has to be the case. When those 3 guys are in the game together, the last 5 minutes, it's going to happen more, in closer games. That unit has to be really good, and they have to figure out how to make that work. You know what I mean? So that's what it'll come down to, I think, in like playoff situations.
I think you're exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Kumar.
I know. I mean, you've worked with Kevin Durant. You worked with James Harden. Of course, when they start, when you were training them, they were pretty young. They were like new to the NBA, and both are like superstars right now. Both have been MVPs. Both have, of course, Kevin Durant has won a championship with the Golden State Warriors. Do you think there's going to be a major difference playing together now versus playing together when they were in OKC?
Absolutely. Because they're already established players now. So, James had this last year with Russell, and I don't know if there are any issues or not. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying they're at a different spectrum in their career. So, but they all watch each other. I'm sure they all have a relationship. That's going to be helpful in terms of working together. You're going to probably see more outbursts on the court because they are close, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever you are dealing with people on the court that you're close with, you're going to see those emotions a little bit more, So I'm sure that's going to be taken out of context a lot of times, just guessing. But that's just like, if you're out on the court with your sibling, you're going to see that, So, but all of that's going to be helpful. They're going to communicate, just like anything. Communication is always huge in terms of what you're going through, what your reasons are for not liking a certain deal or what you need. And they're going to have that respect for each other. But, and since there are 3 of them, it's just, I think there's more of an opportunity to kind of get what they want. Now, they just have to be happy in those stretches of the games that they can play the way they want to play.
Yeah, and I think that they've all, KD and Harden have played together, so they kind of already know your game, know their own games, and like kind of know each other's games, like, hey, what spots they like to get the ball and everything. So I don't think that'll be as big of an adjustment. But
this one, Mr. Patel, I'm sorry, this one's a little bit different because when they play together in OKC, James was the younger guy, right? So he was just trying to. He was learning from Kevin, I believe, and Russ in kind of the young culture that we had in terms of work ethic, right? Mm-hmm. So he was learning how to be a pro from those guys. Mm-hmm. Then he was carrying the second unit, and he was just surprising us and the opposing teams, And then I think it would have happened the year he got traded. That was the year because he came off of USA Basketball. He played in the Drew League first time with Kobe, and he was like, okay, I'm just as good as these guys, right? So from there, I think it would have happened. It happened in that training camp. You can almost see that he was, starting to really come along. His unit was beating those guys' units, that kind of stuff in practices. So they haven't really experienced them at their best. I know Harden has with Kevin. And it'd be kind of similar to the USA Basketball, but it's a whole entire, just like you talked about, right? So the first Golden State, they had their own system and style of play before Kevin joined in. Then it was just about him joining in and figuring out how to make that work, right? So now they're going to establish their own system, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So they really are just coming in. Maybe they have an idea in their minds on how it's supposed to look, but they're going to figure it out as the games go along, that, some things aren't working, some things are working, and kind of relearning each other's games.
I think you're exactly right, Coach. And I wanted to ask you about the defense. Are you worried about the defensive end for the Brooklyn Nets because they got rid of Karis LeVert, Torian Prince, Jared Allen, who's a shot blocker? I know they still have 3 roster spots open that they could make some additional trades at the deadline or buyouts. But are you worried about the defensive end for the Nets, or they're just going to try to outscore people?
That's a good question. So they have the big Allen's big one, right? So they have Jordan. Who's their other big man? So Kevin can play 5 at times. So they can go
to Jordan, yeah.
So that's the thing with Harden. His post defense is really, really elite. Okay. I'm not saying he's the greatest defender of all time. Clearly not. I'm not saying that, but he's a really, really good post defender. So they can switch, right? So all those guys can guard one-on-one a little bit. I'm not sure on some of the role players because Prince was a big key. But, they have versatility with switching. Durant is really, really helps your defense flexibility-wise. His length, he can guard 5s, he can guard 4s, he can guard anyone 1 through 5, right? So from there, that should be helpful defensively. It's kind of like that Golden State second unit. So they have the opportunity for that. And then they have that big guy plugging it up, So, and I think they have enough speed with all those guys. Again, to switch and to be aggressive. If they had another 5, maybe who's faster, they can adjust and play more aggressive defensively versus some teams. But I think they have enough flexibility. It's just those guys, are they willing to put the work in to win, like the hard stuff every single game, or when it really, really counts. That's the main the main thing. And that's hard to do. It's not but that's the thing. These guys know how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe Kyrie was maybe with the Boston guys. He was almost assuming that LeBron position just from going off of what I read, and maybe that wasn't who he was. You know what I mean? So he was trying to lead in a certain way that wasn't him naturally, So and then last year, I don't think he probably thought that the team was good enough. But now I think you'll see a different spirited guy.
Yeah, my only concern is, of course, Kevin Durant could have gone to any team, or he could have re-signed with the Warriors, but he chose to partner with Kyrie in Brooklyn. And all of a sudden, now you have a new wingman. Kyrie was the wingman, and now Kevin is like, hey, I think the wingman changes to James Harden. So I just hope that, they can work together, the chemistry builds. It's going to take some time. So maybe after the All-Star break, they're able to figure out the team combination.
It's weird. Everything changes when you win, so, and I think
exactly right.
Some of those guys know that, so I think, I think that'll be a big factor in terms of just, okay, this is really what it's about. And then that, I know I experienced it one time with the Spurs, as an intern, and, I think about those moments, and it's funny though, that year and that organization really sticks with me because of that championship, so, and I think those, once it happens, I think people start to really realize that.
Right, and there's pressure, this year on the Nets because they gave up 4 first-round picks, Coach. They really kind of mortgaged their future for this year. They're trying to go all in and win. So if they don't win in the next couple of years because Kevin Durant and James Harden and Kyrie all will be, free agents. Right. So we'll see. There's pressure on them to win.
It's interesting because that's the small market way right there. The small market way is to just load up on the picks and hopefully they pan out, but this is Brooklyn and the New York Knicks. This is why we haven't seen this for these teams in ages, and this is what they should be doing. This is big cities that make money. The teams do. The fans are very, very, very invested, and this is what they want. They want the best players in the best cities. This is just the way it should be.
And I think Brooklyn Nets is going to be probably one of the most popular teams in this season. Of course, they didn't perform well in the past seasons, but thank you, Aloysius, for tuning into
thank you.
Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show. Happy Pongal to you as well. And a lot of fans are going to choose the Brooklyn Nets now. At least on paper, they look really good.
I picked the Brooklyn Nets, Coach, before this trade happened to win the championship. So I'm either going to look really good or I'm going to completely fall on my face. So I'm hoping that they ended up beat the Lakers and win the championship.
Well, I'm
going to still pick the Lakers, Shivam.
He's wearing the gold, the yellow for the Lakers already.
Hey, I would love to see that matchup for sure. I'm sure Vegas is probably choosing one of those two teams also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So coach, I wanted to ask you, where do you think Brooklyn Nets rank in the Eastern Conference? Do you still put them? Do you think they're head over heels the first team? But also Philly's playing really well, with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons is going to play a lot more free because he even said yesterday that he was elated that he didn't get traded, because he had some bad blood with the organization. The Boston Celtics look pretty good. The Bucks, of course, with Giannis, two-time reigning MVP. So where do you see kind of the hierarchy in the Eastern Conference, especially after this trade?
Well, I mean, I think, okay, let's see how many games. So it's been 12 games most of these teams have played, right? So there's like 60-something games. So I'm sure the Nets are going to go through a little phase here where they're going to figure some stuff out, So the other three teams are rolling right now. Like, Celtics they have continuity and they're have good momentum right now. Bucks have momentum. They didn't have it earlier in the season. They have it now. And then Philly, of course. So those three teams already have a rhythm. Right. So they'll probably keep sustaining that. Now, the thing with this season is the whole, the COVID environment. You could have a case where a guy misses 10 games, or 10 days, 14 days, and that can change a lot of things. But right now, those three teams on a normal NBA season are rolling. Brooklyn's going to end up playing catch up. So just for that reason, I could see them in the middle of the pack.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a little bit less stress on the Milwaukee Bucks right now, especially after what happened in the postseason with them in the last two seasons. So nobody is really talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, you don't hear the media narrative about Giannis, but they're a really decent team in the East, and I think I probably pick them to be probably at the top of the pack once the season gets over.
I can see that. Very, very good defense, continuity again, and sometimes the continuity gets old, but since they haven't performed in the playoffs to where they wanted to, the continuity is actually really helpful, so yeah, I could see that go on, just barring any injuries and anything of that nature. Now, of course, I think when the playoffs happen, that narrative will come back out and they'll put a lot of pressure on that team to perform. So I can't wait to see that, and if the additions, help in that way. But.
Right, and I really, the Bucks made some pretty good additions. True Holiday is a great, scorer, great defense. I would have loved them to get, Bogdanovich, but that didn't end up working out. But there's Giannis can play a lot more free because he signed that supermax extension. There's no questions about his future. He knows he's going to be in Milwaukee. So both the organization and Giannis can both play free in the playoffs and know that there's no pressure. Just like you said, because no one's really talking about the Bucks.
That's right. And Holiday's so underrated. Now, if he can stay healthy, that'd be a thing. But he's really good. He's really, really good player. And you're right. Defensively, he's just as good, and that's what makes him scary. Now, playoff situation. What's been happening is the Giannis, deal. You really are locked in playoff wise, and then it puts a lot of pressure on guys who make shots throughout the year to make shots. So we'll see if that holds the course. I know Holiday again is a tough dude, but he doesn't have much playoff experience. So we're going to learn a lot about him too.
So let's move on to the West, and I think I should be pretty happy that the Lakers are sitting right on top, and there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to be the number one team in the West.
Oh yeah, they're. I mean, they are what they showed in the bubble, right? So. But again, sometimes these teams, they win a championship. It's going to be up and down in the season. Like how much is it? And now the inclusion of Schroeder, that guy brings it every game. So he brings that energy. They're able to rest some guys and still be good because that's where the continuity helps, right? So guys that are coming off the bench that would be 10th guys, 9th guys for other teams, well, they're going to be performing really well for this team, So just winning that championship elevates everybody, and it gives that confidence and poise to pretty much everyone on that team that's played last year, So that'll make them better. I do think they're going to rest guys at times, and I still think they can win, because of just the elevation of those players, So we experienced that last year when we saw Kuzma and Rondo by themselves pretty much, and Davis and LeBron didn't play, and Rondo decided to have a 5 a.m. meeting with his guys, and we saw the brunt of that. You know what I mean? These guys played inspired, and they played out with a lack of sleep apparently, but they were just dialed in and motivated to basically keep holding the fort with those guys out, and they perform. So they're a very, very good team. And then even a kid like the Tucker kid, he's really skilled. So
oh yeah. That's a good find for the Lakers for this season.
And it really goes, like you said, Coach, they really goes to their depth, where, if their starters aren't playing well, they can bring in that second unit to really energize them, then, really keep them afloat and keep them have the lead. But I think, the Lakers are by far the best team in the Western Conference. They have the 2 stars and then the bench depth. But Mr. Kumar, the Clippers are really flying under the radar so far on this season. There's no pressure on the Clippers. Nobody's talking about them. They're second in the West. They've quietly had a great start to the season. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George are playing a lot more games, getting that continuity together. They also have a great supporting cast. So, Coach, what do you think about the Clippers' prospects coming into the playoffs?
I mean, good. So you have Serge there, Ibaka. So your defense again. He's got that experience. I think Toronto's missing him and Gasol. Unfortunately, you have Montrezl Harrell's now with the Lakers. Marcus Gasol's with the Lakers. It's just they're stacked. But both teams are really good. Lakers, I probably have an edge. In terms of full roster. Clippers have a little more defense experience now with Serge. You got Beverly. They're going to be good in the regular season. They were good versus Denver, and then you get punched in the mouth, and then it's just where does your team go? How they figure it out? Are they going to dial together and kind of figure some things out when they hit that moment? So they can play each other. That's what everyone wants to see, those two teams playing each other.
Oh man, we got robbed last year with the Battle of LA, so I'm crossing the fingers that it happens this year in the playoffs.
Oh man, I hope so. I was with the Clippers. There was almost one time where there was going to be a locker room series. It was right there, and then we ended up missing out. So yeah, I think it was we lost to Phoenix maybe, and the Lakers. No, the Lakers lost to Phoenix. Yeah. And then we were supposed to play the Lakers when I was with the Clippers. That would have been the first ever locker room series. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so too, that these two teams meet in the Western Conference only so that Skip Bayless could probably shut up and admit that the Lakers were better than the Clippers. With the Clippers, it's just like a little bit of inconsistency at times. I mean, they had probably one of the worst games in NBA history when they lost to the Mavericks by 51 points.
But Kawhi didn't play, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, but I mean, and then of course they had that game where Golden State Warriors came back after a 20-point lead. So I mean, they have those off days, and that's the only problem with the Clippers is that sometimes. They're not just motivated enough in terms of completing that game. So that's the only problem I have with the Clippers. They have really good players like Paul George and Leonard there, but so the new coach again, they're working out a system. So again, they just need to figure out what's best for them.
It's hard, these seasons, right? Like I remember playing Los Angeles with OKC last year. In the bubble, OKC dominated the Lakers. We had no business to do that, but it was just one of those games for the Lakers. You know what I mean? So that doesn't mean we're going to end up beating the Lakers, I think, in the playoffs, but it's hard. Every single game, just like you're saying, that motivation. Brooklyn had it in game 1 of the season for whatever reason, 1 or 2. It's just, can you find that rhythm at the end? Just how Philly and Boston are right now. They have that rhythm going. Lakers have that rhythm going. Can you find that at the end, the last 5 games of the season, to carry on into the playoffs? So, and Jeff Van Gundy always said your habits carry. I do believe in that, but if you can have that rhythm at the end, that can carry on to the rest of the playoffs.
Right, because you have that momentum going into the playoffs.
That's right.
Yeah, because you see the teams that finish strong end up having good playoffs. But we had a fan question now. Muthu's asking, watch out for the Suns and Mavericks. So, Coach, I want to ask you your thoughts on both of those teams because, I'm sure you're very familiar with them.
That's right. The Suns, Chris Paul, right? So I'm familiar with him. He is exactly what they say. He's an incredible vet. He can play the game, and even when the emotions and pressures are high, he can stay really, really stable and direct and perform. And when guys are not willing to perform in the fourth, he can read it and kind of take over. He's really good. If you give him a spot on the floor, he can capitalize in clutch situations. The Suns in general, a guy like Javon Carter, to me, he's like Beverly. He's very underrated. They just got a great lineup situation with their first and second unit. I feel with athleticism, enough defense around the guys. Ayton, he seems a little more mature. They're utilizing Ayton and Booker to their strengths, of course. Chris is coming in when he needs to, but he's given that direction. So they're pretty stable. And then the second unit, they have enough shooting. Even a guy like Galloway is like the 11th, 10th guy off the bench. He's really good, you know. So they have, I think the talent is there. And then you have, again, a guy like Carter is pretty underrated. It's offensively, he can change the game just by being out there and doing some things with his energy. So I like them, and they're young, they're athletic. Now the Mavericks, to me, of course, I watch them every single night. I filtered Doncic's touches every single night just to watch his skills. His footwork is amazing. That team could really score, but that's a team I think you were mentioning before. Is Brooklyn going to outscore you? I think the Mavericks, that's how they have to play. They have to outscore you to win games. So Carlisle does a good job of, with his coach accountability. He's out there. He's going to impact the game from a coaching standpoint. He's going to call some good after timeout plays. They're going to zone or whatever when they need to and adjust. But it's just defensively, physical wise, athleticism, wise, I don't know. That's the only thing I kind of question with that team long run. But they could prove me wrong. They have length, but it's just that speed, quickness, individual defenders, that kind of stuff is what I think they're missing. But they're going to put up a lot of points on you, So.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think is like the dark horse in the Western Conference?
I like Portland because they added those defenders. Covington, Derek Jones Jr. I think those guys bring that Harkless role and a Aminu role that was missing and that made him successful in the past. I think Cantor now I think he's in a spot that he's wanted. You know what I mean? And he really works well with those guys because you have to really, be aggressive on Lillard. It's Lillard time, right? So they'll probably lead the league.
Time.
It's Dame time, right? So I've experienced that. So, they lead the league in probably, I'm just guessing, in threes, right? So you're going to have to be a little more aggressive to take that away, and that's where Cantor can really help out. You got Nurkic. Nurkic is really good with his roles. They have great hands. So they have the right bigs. They were missing the bigs last year, so they have the bigs. They have the defense that they were missing last year. And in the emergence of, I think, Gary Trent Jr., I watched him the first couple of games. I'm just assuming he's still on that trajectory. He can really, really – I think he's underrated in terms of, scoring and being that wild card, that third – that Karis LeVert when he was with Brooklyn role, you know what I mean? So Trent Jr. is pretty good. So they have a good little roster right now, good little rotation.
Yeah, I was impressed with, Derek Jones as well, especially when they played with the Lakers and he was defending LeBron. And,
right.
It was a good game for Portland.
That's right. That's where I think a lot of people, watch the defense. I think that's really important. That's really important parts, especially when your best players are a little limited individually, defensively wise. You're going to need guys because at the end of the day, now when you play Brooklyn, you're going to have to guard those three guys with somebody. So at least two of them are covered now. So.
Right. So, Coach, I wanted to ask you about the Pelicans, in the Western Conference. They have all this talent. Of course, Zion Williamson, what a high flyer, great dunker he is. But, Lonzo Ball's been playing pretty well. Brandon Ingram has really taken that step. He's like their go-to guy now, to get a bucket. They still struggle in the defensive end, but they have a new coach. Van Gundy, Stan Van Gundy is really trying to bring a defensive emphasis and defensive culture to the Pelicans. So, do you think they'll make the playoffs, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Stan, I think with he's a coach that he's almost like Thibodeau to me. Like, your team is going to know the other team, all their plays that they're going to run. Now you have some guys, and what he does is he trains the young guys for that, so I think these young guys are young enough to be receptive to that. I hope if they are, they're going to learn a lot about the league, and the game will slow down from a defensive standpoint over the course of time. I know with Steven Adams, it will. That's catered to him. Steven wants to know everything about the opponent. He's big on the game plan. So I think when you watch Steve now, you can see him direct a little bit more. He knows exactly what's happening a little bit more, and I think that's because of Stan's influence. So I think that's a really good thing. I think they're going to be really good in the paint defensively. But yeah, you're right. As far as schemes and kind of what they want to do and maybe some breakdowns, not so much right now, but hopefully that gets better. Their second unit is a little bit lighter. You have to, protect a guy like Redick a little bit more, just with his quickness. Ingram and those guys should be able to guard. They have Bledsoe too, correct?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yes,
they
do.
So that's helpful. So you have, Bledsoe, Ingram should be able to, and Lonzo Ball should be able to guard. So they should have really, really good, especially starter-wise defense. So we'll see over the course. Zion, they got to hide and protect a little bit. Lateral quickness is not there as much, kind of reaching in. He's kind of defensively unorthodox, kind of awkward. Offensively, not at all. He's amazing. So I think there's still a limitation there with Zion, but they have enough with the other four guys to be really good from their starters. And then I think Steven's going to be better because of Stan. I think Ingram, I value him a lot. I watch him just like Luka. His skills, unbelievable. He's got a little of that Kobe MJ kind of game that Kyrie kind of brought into his game, turnarounds, and his footwork is really, really good, high level. So I watch him to watch clips on skill work. I think he's a really, really talented. He made the All-Star game maybe last year. Ingram,
yes,
All-Star game,
and the most improved player.
Yeah, I could see all that. Hopefully he makes that game again this year. He deserves it. He's a really good player. And then Lonzo, big credit to him with his shot. The form is different, and he can make threes right now. So, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So I think move on to the next question. We were talking about Lonzo Ball, but of course we had his brother LaMelo Ball scoring, the youngest player to score a triple-double.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the rookies of the season. I think we have the top three candidates, which is LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman, and Tyrese Halliburton from the Sacramento Kings. Those were my picks, of course. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this category goes to pretty much the playing time and the statistics, I think, of these guys. You know what I mean? So Halliburton right now, I'm sure stat-wise is looking pretty good. Also, you got Edwards, and then the kid from Chicago. The kid from Chicago starts.
Oh, Patrick Williams.
Patrick Williams.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he starts will be, kind of making the case there. I think what separates LaMelo Ball from those other guys, I think Halliburton has played more than the other ones, except for LaMelo. LaMelo, the separation is the professional experience that he's had, his journey, and it's how much he plays the game of basketball, right? So because of that, you're getting more of a seasoned, poised guy. Of course, he's got the hot dog in him with the way he plays and the flash and flare, but he is poised. He's going to be under control. Of course, he's going to have some bad games. But, these guys get talked to all the time, as rookies. They're going to get talked to by their vets. They're going to get talked to by their agents this year. Their bodies are going to really feel it. Although I don't think will feel it as much because he's played a lot, So you're dealing with all these things, and it makes when you do something for the first time, it's more rushed, right? And each time you do it through experience, it slows down. Well, the game is a little bit more slowed down for him than I think the other guys. He's able to be, open and alert and poised throughout the games, where I think the other guys are, it's going to take them some time. They'll have one or two really good ones and then a couple of bad ones. Kid in Chicago, he's in a role where he's just doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's getting to a spot, they're allowing him to shoot, and he's really long, and they need his defense, and he can do that continuously. LaMelo, they need him to be stable, So there's going to be some downs because he's getting used to the league and kind of the size and athleticism. He's probably used to playing against the size just by playing professionally and physicality, but the athleticism is something that I'm sure he has to keep adjusting to. But I like it. I love his skills. I love his skill set. I think he is very good. Very, very good. And he's got a knack on the defensive end with active hands to get steals. And I'm sure Charlotte, they rank pretty high with steals. And I think, give credit to Coach Borrego for being aggressive. He's changed the style defensively, almost like Indiana is doing. And they kind of changed the way they defend based on the opponent. But they're a little more aggressive. They're coming towards you, and they're going to need those turnovers. And that helps younger groups because of the transition, so.
And no one's really paying attention, but the Charlotte Hornets have had a really good start to the year. Gordon Hayward's completely balling out. People question that contract, $120 million, but he's played really well. They have a lot of great, young players. But like as you were saying about Rookie of the Year, both LaMelo and Halliburton come off the bench. Wiseman starts, Anthony Edwards starts, Patrick Williams starts. So their stats may not be as good as compared to them, but you have to kind of keep it in perspective and context. But like you said, LaMelo has all the skills, professional experience. He still needs to work on his jump shot a little bit, but I love Coach that he doesn't force things. He doesn't always look for his own shot. He tries to get other people involved and his teammates involved and empower them. And I think that's really his biggest attribute. And that game with LaMelo against Lonzo, LaMelo almost had a triple-double that game. He was like one assist shy of having a triple-double, but he ended up getting a triple-double against the Hawks. So LaMelo has a really bright future, and I think he has the highest ceiling out of this draft class.
It's interesting, I like to watch. I need to watch more of these guys, but you can watch it in how his teammates react to him. Like, do they like playing with him or not? And they don't. But if they don't like playing with him, those guys will get pulled out of closer games.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But if they like playing with them, and everyone can feel that, you'll see them involved in fourth quarters or like when they need to be involved. Or is it close and you see him getting taken out? There's a reason, it's just that trust isn't there, and it either from the veterans, the players that are on the court, or from the coaches, So once that gets established, and if you can see that their first year, then okay, this guy for he's going to have it for a while, So yeah, and I could see that with LaMelo Ball. I could see that. I think he helps and pushes that team in a good rate for the most part. I think his teammates feel that too when I watch those games.
Go ahead, Shivam.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to ask you, Coach, about the Warriors. So we asked the question, can Steph Curry lead the Warriors to the playoffs? He's had some crazy games, 50-point games, 30-point games. So what do you think about the Warriors' chances this year, Coach?
Yeah, that's a good one. So Wiseman's a really good finisher, right? So then they got Draymond Green's back. So now your defense is going to be good. And now Curry can play off the ball a little bit, right? So he can get shots. Now, the only question I would ask to you guys is, this is what makes that guy Curry so amazing. Like, if I were to ask you, can you guard him one-on-one? Can anybody in the league guard him one-on-one? What would you say to that?
I would say no. What about you, Mr. Kumar?
It totally depends. If you have, stronger guy and, stuff like that, yes, maybe yes. But, but his ability to overcome that is, phenomenal because, the way he can, if he has his day, which is pretty much often, you can't stop him.
And he has the crazy handles, Coach, where he could, even if someone is trying to pick him up, he can get anywhere on the court, and he's crafty. He has a quick release on his shot. So even if he's going against stronger players, he has different ways that he can navigate.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting at. And Mr. Kumar, that's really, yeah, you're right. So then you bring a screen over there, right? And then now you get the screen involved that I'm sure you can't go under on, right? So now it's like, you're going to have to bring multiple guys. And they say the same. Why don't you bring multiple guys all the time? So a good game is watching the Indiana game versus Golden State, right? So Indiana ended up winning. The tough thing is you're going to have to tilt your defense so much to Curry, right? So just to get away his spots, which is pretty much anywhere. And even if you're close, he can escape, and get his shot off. And then you're just like praying that he misses. So you have to really, really like focus in on taking him out. Now to do that, you might be down 20. Like some of those guys are going to get easy scores, and that's what happened in the Indiana game. Now most of the times you kind of cave back in and go back to a normal base defense. Indiana just kept pushing that and saying, this is what we came to do. We're just going to keep riding with it. And you could see it start to turn, and eventually it turned in the fourth. Even after Curry, at the end of the third quarter, the minute left, he had an unbelievable, toe slide 3 in transition behind the back. It was an amazing move, right? He had all this energy in the fourth quarter. They just kept sticking with the game plan instead of kind of caving in, and it ended up turning for him. So, but that's what happens when you kind of have a defense like that. You're kind of rolling, you're gambling, you know what I mean? But you're going to need to do that a lot more with Golden State. I think the more teams are kind of have these things, the more you can kind of create a game plan. But I do think they're a playoff team because they have enough other guys and they have enough finishing in their game. And with Draymond Green, if Draymond Green's out there, you're going to, Curry's going to steal 2 or 3 threes just running around the baseline. Even though you know what's going on, it's easier said than done in the middle of the game. When he passes it, comes back out off the 3-point line, you're going to miss 1 or 2 of them. You know what I mean? He's going to hit a 3. Defensively, they're better with Green out there. It's just Wiggins and those guys. Can they follow and do the hard things defensively? They're not known to do it. Oubre is, but it can Wiggins kind of do the hard, dirty work, defensively, and then kind of battle through some criticism from his teammates. That stuff's going to come. Wiseman, these sort of guys, and just stay strong and end up just doing the job. You know what I mean? And they'll start winning some games. But I do think they believe. I think they had some big wins. It's less pressure off Curry when Green's out there, so hopefully they can stay healthy.
Absolutely. So let's move on a little bit away from the NBA because we have a lot of Indian fans, and we would like to know your story, Vin, about how an engineering student became the assistant coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, it's a crazy. So, I went to University of Southern California. My dad went there, and he was an engineer. So I went into the engineering track really because of just that. That's what I grew up in the household, and I saw my dad go to work every day.
That's what 99.9%
that's right.
of Indians.
That's right.
Live with an engineer.
That's what you see.
Engineering.
And usually you don't know what you want to do when you're 19, 20. I think some kids are starting to kind of figure things out earlier now, and even when I was 20, some guys when they were 20 were in a different place in their life, But so that was the engineering. It wasn't, it was more so because I didn't really know. But anyways, it was good education. Studied that and I knew that that's not what I really wanted to do. And I think when I was, a senior, I had a dream. I was always loved teaching and I loved coaching. For whatever reason, I love to coach boxing. My friends like to go, makeshift rings and box a little bit. And I'd be the trainer, So, and I liked it. And I had a dream like basketball is where I think that's it. I think that's what I want to coach. It was really, really random, but it felt right. And then from there, I just said, how could I get this done? And, I used the alumni network at USC, made contacts with some guys in the NBA that went to USC, and then, somehow managed my way to get an internship with the Clippers. And then from there, it took a few years, but I ended up meeting James Borrego, Coach Borrego, when he was with San Antonio as a video coordinator. I helped him one day, and just because of that, he called me, in the summertime, and offered me a position with San Antonio as an intern, and the Clippers ended up wanting to pay me. And, I went to my parents then. I said, my parents weren't too big on the career path for a few years until the Clippers made the playoffs. They went to one of the coaches gave my parents tickets, and that changed everything. It was just when they felt the arena and the success, they're like, let's just do this now, So yeah, that changed everything. And then the Borrego, that was really lucky. I don't know how he thought of me, what happened in that transaction, but he called me, and then I went to San Antonio, and honestly, that was like Harvard for basketball, right? So I took notes every single day. Chip England's there. I learned that shooting can be trained. and really studied him, studied Coach Popovich, how he organizes himself, just the ins and outs. When I was with the Clippers, I learned the language of the NBA. That's huge. Just what the stuff is called, what the actions are called, just with anything, right? Terminology. So you're almost learning on the job. And then from the foundation of doing video was huge because the game slowed down in such a way because I just watched tape nonstop, right? And it broke the game down the way the Spurs wanted to. So I saw the game through kind of the leaders over there, their eyes, so, and even to the point when you're working for Coach Popovich in that position, that he would put you behind the bench for the first half and you end up with a notepad and anything that he wants video clip wise for halftime, you have to write down and run back to James Borrego in the back. So from that, I learned exactly what he's thinking and like, oh, okay, he's going to want that one, and that kind of stuff. So you're learning a lot from that, and you're learning a lot on the court, and you're just learning constantly, in the room that we worked with, myself, this gentleman named Brian Keefe, I think he'll be a head coach in the NBA soon. James Borrego, Mike Wells is with Utah. Brett Brown was assistant coach. Coach Budenholzer, assistant coach. I mean, Chad Forchier when he came the next year. So look at the room that we're in. You know what I mean? So every day with this and helping them, they definitely involved us. I was part of that culture that they were willing to help. So I'm done with the internship, 2 years. They didn't have a spot. Sam comes calling. He was there the first year. And, they said, just go over there. I wanted to stay with San Antonio at the time. I didn't know, but Sam offered me. And, I went there and they won a championship in San Antonio. And kind of that's my backbone. So when I talk about basketball, a lot of the times, it's what I've learned with that program. It's like going to that really good college, in theory. So, yeah.
That's amazing, Coach. And I wanted to ask you specifically about your experience, with OKC. You were there 12 years, manager of advanced scouting, video coordinator, assistant coach. You're around a lot of great coaches, Coach Brooks, Coach Donovan. So just kind of tell the audience about your experience in OKC and kind of what you learned.
It was an amazing. Okay, again, it's hard to get something like that because usually you go into a team and it's already established. Well, when I went there, we didn't even have a logo. You know what I mean? And everybody was young. There was no vets. It's Coach Brooks' first year. Well, actually, PJ Carlissimo was the coach, right? So, unfortunately, he gets fired after the first 12 games. Coach Brooks takes over. He's never been a head coach before, right? Our whole staff now. So we had a couple guys leave. Our whole staff, first-time assistants. So players were all new. Kevin Durant had 1 year on his belt. Jeff Green did. So we had to establish a culture, but we've never done it before. You know what I mean? So it was like, all right, this is how Coach Gergerich did it. This is how we did it in San Antonio. This is how, so we just grinded and kind of established a culture with those young guys. And Coach Brooks, I can count it. I know the scenes in my mind. There's decisions you make as a leader, right? It's not every day, but it's like once a couple months even. Maybe once a year that can change the trajectory of the team. There are about 3 or 4 situations that happened from that season and the next season and decisions that were made that changed the trajectory. And he had the guts to do it. And even with Harden, when he came in, probably the best draft workout I've ever seen in my life. Not even close, right? So he naturally was really, really gifted, right? So he's probably done things his own way. First summer league practice, right? He shows up late. And Coach Brooks, just goes at him. You know what I mean? And that day, it kind of set a foundation. And then participate in seeing with Durant and Westbrook, how they were working, kind of how they learned professional habits, working habits. He had to join the pack. And it's tough. It's really tough to work every single day. Then go have a game, then come back the next day and put in work again. Most guys, they maintain. Usually your body breaks down, but his body was able to hold its course. And I contribute. He's a worker. You can see how much his game has evolved, right? But maybe without the first couple of years, he wouldn't have had that foundation, to see success by all that work that he was doing. You know what I mean? So, and then I think couple that with the foundation that he kind of got established from OKC and then his Olympic experience, and then playing with Kobe in the Drew League, I think all of that just culminated into that confidence. And then, I can do this too. And then from there, I think it just took off for him. But yeah, that's what it was. Just fresh. We had no clue. We were all young. Everybody was first time in doing the job. But we tried to establish a logo first for the city, and then that happened. And I think we won really, really early. Our trajectory was probably years later, and it just happened so quickly. You know what I mean? Because we didn't know Durant was so skinny. Russell was so wild. Harden, we didn't know. Like, we're working on the defense. Now apparently that hasn't really come through. But I swear he's guarded at times when he was with us. But and we're just learning these guys were almost learning each day and with each game. And you can just see it start to turn until we played the Lakers series. Was unbelievable. I mean, that team was so good. And we were so undersized. We had Nenad Kristic at the
I remember
time.
that series. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we had no business in there, and in that crowd, that first game in Game 3, honestly, best crowd I've ever seen. Best crowd I've ever seen. I mean, that third quarter. If you YouTube that third quarter, that run, I think it was like 3 straight threes and a dunk or something like that. That crowd was unreal, and then we took the next 2 games. And we almost beat that team. We lost on a tip-in, but just the defense, they're able to execute a defensive. We changed a lot for the Triangle and for the Lakers. They were able to execute. They put their, put it all on the line. Jeff Green played he was like that last year. He was playing undersized and he was playing and he was fighting with these bigs. But these guys they were all doing it. They're all doing whatever it took to win. And kind of, we saw it faster than we probably expected to, so, but yeah, that's what it was. It was just fresh. It was newness. It was inexperienced, but it was just great. We just pounded it raw. So
what can you share, like one memorable experience or, one of your best experience you've had as a coach, either with the Spurs, the Clippers, or the OKC?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot, of course. San Antonio, I mean, Coach Pop, I never got out, so these guys, some of these coaches took me out, and then they framed me. They took pictures of me, make sure that I stayed outside. So I'll always remember that one because Coach Pop used the footage in a playoff situation, right? And might have gotten labeled in the wrong light. I swear, I'm not a guy that goes out a lot. So my name went from Vinny to Disco, So it was fun. I'll always remember that. And there's a lot of other stories in San Antonio, Oklahoma City. It's just that was so much fun, man. All those playoff series, the Memphis. I mean, I could just name all the series and kind of going it through together with the guys. That I'll always cherish. Just I remember the first logo that we had. Seeing the memorial, with Oklahoma City. We're built off of the resiliency from the bombing, the memorial, and it's really, really true. Just seeing the whole, culture get started, and there's so many moments within that. That again, the Lakers shot that third quarter, like I'll never forget. Just hearing that crowd and just that bang, when that 3 goes in. I think it was a Durant 3. It was our first lead against the Lakers. It's like, oh man, we could beat the Lakers. Like this team is the best, and they ended up winning the championship. And then just the years forward, the finals, I remember James Harden, the last practice. He ended up, usually coaches, you shoot free throws, you miss, you have to run. Right, the team does. He missed like 10 straight or something like that. He did 10 lines, like after missed again. And I'll remember that. I'm like, this might be the last time I see this guy, with this team. And I had to take a snapshot because I knew decisions were going to be made that night. So, and there's so many. I remember what David Stern told us at the end when we lost to Miami. So just walking around that room afterwards. And, just the vibe in there, and we felt like we had that series. We had it the first game, and the second game was a questionable call, and it just went south. LeBron just figured it out from game 3 on. You could see it, and how LeBron was starting to figure out how to win in the finals. He'd never done it before. You know what I mean? He had cramps every single game, came back in, and he's like, man, like he knew he had to fight through and go that extra mile, and then you could see it. If he just took one of those games off, from the crowd, we could have maybe won, or we were so close because that was the first time somebody's ever went small ball on us. It didn't work game one. If it didn't work game two, they would have went back big, which we would have had a chance. But these are from a coaching standpoint, these are things that you're thinking in your head that don't leave you, especially in those moments. You can remember like the choices and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So one last controversial question for you, Vin.
Okay.
LeBron or Durant?
Oh.
Wow. I mean,
You
I
gotta
would have.
choose one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You got to choose one.
Yeah, I would probably go with what I always went with LeBron, because I think he
Not a
can.
bad choice. That's a good
Yeah, your team I think will win. But now what Kevin has done with Golden State and when he's performed, it's in the final situation like that I never saw with him. So and I saw it many years with those championships. Like there, that stuff was taken away in the playoffs, the normal, what they usually do with Golden State, and he had to carry them a few of those games. So, but just like I saw Curry and Thompson carry them when in Oklahoma City and we were up 3-1.
Mhm.
But yeah, anyways, but yeah, so I could see it's closer than I would have went with LeBron like right away 4 years ago. But yeah, I would still, overall choose LeBron. I'm sure right now we'll see with Kevin, coming back from the Achilles and that kind of stuff. But Kevin's younger, so from now, because that might sway back to Kevin, but but yeah, LeBron, I think he just does more for your team when he feels like he can win. That's different, and that's the thing. You just have to have like those guys have to. They know. Okay, we have enough. We have enough to do it. So yeah, and he's led his team like directly, on both ends. He knows what it takes, and I think Kevin does too. But I think LeBron has willed his team to do it. I've seen it more.
Right, he's been more consistent, a little bit over a longer period of time because he's played so long, being 36. Right. But thank you, Vin, so much for coming on the show. Coach, it was great to hear your perspective on the NBA, hear some great stories, with all your time with OKC, the Clippers, and the Spurs. Best of luck going forward, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It was fun. I don't mind doing this anytime. So it was fun.
Yeah, and you're my friend because you chose LeBron. So anything is okay.
Oh man,
I'm from Los Angeles. Most of my friends, Coach, are all Laker fans, die hard. I mean, like growing up.
Growing up in California.
With point 3 on the clock, I still remember that party celebration we had. But yeah, all my friends back home, die hard Laker fans, like full on would get tattoos. Just every game they're watching, intensely. Hardcore fans. So I hear you.
Coach, did Mr. Kumar pay you to say LeBron before bribe you before the show to say LeBron?
Coach is a man of conviction, so I love that. It's great.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a great combination because there are 3 Indian guys. One is former assistant coach, of course, still a coach. One in the San Antonio, and me from Mumbai. So this combination really works.
It does. Well, thank you, Coach.
All right. You guys have a good one. Take care.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Well, Mr. Kumar, what a great interview that we had. Well, it didn't even feel like an interview. Great conversation. We talked about all things NBA. It was great to hear a coach, reflect on his journey so far, and what an incredible journey it has been, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely, and it was wonderful to get a new perspective as well, especially with all the news going around in the NBA. We just wanted an expert to come in and weigh us as well. Thank you, Kairav Sharma, for tuning into the show. I know you asked about his views on the Harden trade. I think just log into the show again, because he did speak about it at the first part of the show. So you can watch it again, of course. So all you guys out there, so just like us, comment, subscribe to our YouTube, the Ekalavyas YouTube channel. And also like, share, and subscribe to the Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel. And of course, you can, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Patel and Kumar.
Yep, it was a great episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to Coach. Thank you to Mr. Kumar, everybody that involved, all parties. We had a wonderful show. We'll be back again in a couple weeks, January 28th. We have another exciting guest coming to you. So we'll have more NBA and then continue to enjoy watching the NBA and watching everybody play show out. So thank you.
Have a good night. And once again, happy Makar Sankranti, happy Lodi, happy Pongal. Enjoy the festivities.
Yep.